Hello everyone, welcome to part 3. For this last segment, you will need the appropriate PPE as well as a few tools. A recently calibrated multimeter, a set of Allen wrenches, and a regular wrench. The first thing you're going to do is remove the 4 hex screws holding down the panel. Make sure not to misplace the screws by putting them in a bag or a small container near the box. Once all 4 mounting screws have been removed, gently pick up the panel and flip it on its side, sitting it down on the panel mount. At this point, you will want to readjust your grip and also make sure there's no obstructions in the way before you completely flip over the panel. Once the panel is secure, you will want to perform the same physical and visual inspections that we did on the top of the panel. Following the flow path, you will look for signs of loose fittings, ruptures or kinks in the flexible hose, and signs of moisture or rust. The dimensions of the hoses used inside of the leaker monitors are as follow: 3/8 for blue, 1/4 inch for green, and the fittings are always stainless steel compression for maximum durability. For this next part, you will be looking for loose connectors, desoldered wires, or damaged cables. Starting from the power plug, trace your way back all the way to the touchscreen. Once you have verified that there is no loose cables or exposed wires, you will prop open the panel to power up the machine. For this next step, you will need your multimeter to verify that your machine is indeed receiving anywhere between 12 to 24 volts. Unfortunately, in this shot, my hand covered the screen, but we were getting 24 volts. You will now repeat the process, starting with the power supply for the touchscreen. This power supply is coming off of the yellow power supply board, so it will not be a perfect 24 volts anymore. You will now repeat this process on the cables that lead to the flow meters and pressure gauge. If unsure what wires are the power and ground, please refer to the label on the cables. If the label is missing, you can look it up in the user's manual. At this point, you have verified that power supply is not an issue. You will now disconnect the machine from the power. On the yellow power distribution board, you will look for signs of rust or corrosion. These can be found on plain sight or hiding in between the connector pins. Once you have inspected the top of the connectors, go ahead and disconnect the male from the female end and look in between the pins for rust or loose connections. Once you have completed inspecting the power distribution board, you will trace back the flow meters one cable at a time. Pick a cable and trace it back to the flow meter. Once you get to the end of the cable, you will find the plug for the flow meter. Unplug it and look for signs of rust or corrosion inside. Also keep an eye out for bent pins. If everything looks good, go ahead and plug the meter back up and proceed to do the same thing to the other two flow meters and pressure gauge. And remember that when plugging in the flow meter, the plug can only be plugged in one direction, that is with the cable going away to the right. For training purposes, we will pretend that we have found an issue with one of the flow meters. Further yet, we have narrowed it down to the low range flow meter. At this point, what you will want to do is disconnect the power cable, take your wrench, and disconnect the upstream and downstream flow hoses. When opening up the leak rate monitor system, always make sure to provide appropriate FME covers to prevent any foreign material from making its way into the system. You will now need to flip over the panel to expose the mounting screws that are holding down the flow meter. With an Allen wrench, loosen up and remove the two screws that hold down the flow meter to the panel. With your other hand, maintain a firm grip of the flow meter. If once you have removed the flow meter, it does not SAM out and is still contaminated, you will need to provide us with the following information: the serial number of the units and the unit ID, whether if it's low, medium, or high flow. Once your flow meter has been repaired or replaced, all you got to do is pop it back in, plug it back up, and you're good to go. Thanks to the modular design of the Graftel leak rate monitor that was designed for easy repairs with minimal downtime. This concludes the final installment of the tutorial for troubleshooting and repairing the Graftel leak rate monitor model number 9623. Thanks for watching.